On the record.
Hello, everybody. We are in week 2 of April's class of 2018. I am Michael Tabb. I am the professor and course director of 2 classes this month, uh, character creation and development and writing for film and animation. Today, we're just answering questions and talking about the process where we are in each class and discussing the homework to come in the week to come. Just so you know, if I answer questions that you didn't hear asked, it's from the chat window, which you cannot see in the recording. I don't know why GoToTraining doesn't include the picture-in-picture of the video that is presenting with my face on it, or why it doesn't include the chat window so you can see what's being asked by the students. But I will answer them, and I'll give you all the information that is referred to so far in this meeting. All right, to start with. What was I saying? What was your question? Where were we going? We were talking for the last 10 minutes before the class officially started. Mr. Warburton, what were we asking? We were talking about notes on material, and basically that I will try my best always to tell you specifically at least what is wrong. If I don't have an idea of it for sure what you want to achieve with your idea or with the thing you were writing, I will try to give you an idea. I like to spitball with my students. I like to help and give them examples of how to fix what they're doing if I see what they're trying to do. Sometimes what they've written, I can't quite get a grasp on where they're going. So I will always, at the very least, say, look, this is what's being done wrong here. Here's the instruction you missed, which is why this isn't working, to give you an idea how to fix toward what you want. If I don't know how to give you an idea to spitball off of, just so it's clear, you can always, always, always use any idea I give you in class. It's not ripping off. I'm doing this to help you. If you feel what I say was right and that was what you meant, then use it. Just like 2 years after you've graduated from this program, if you still have a question, you can email Michael Tabb. Okay? I'm always here to answer your questions. Yes,
Very
I'm
cool.
a screenwriter. Yes, I am a screenwriter. I'm writing a movie right now for somebody. But I think the best thing I could do for the world, since I feel like I have figured out some things about how to do this craft, is I will impact the world 100 times better if I give all the tricks that I learned to other writers so they can take writing to the next level versus me just hogging it to myself and just doing my little 3 scripts a year. So anyway, all right. So I'm going to open up the floor and everybody feel free. I am not going to mute your microphones. If you're not speaking at the time or you don't have something to say in the moment, please mute yourselves to stop feedback and a sound loop being created. But you are always free to chime in, ask a question, get clarity. This is an open forum. It's like a classroom. So that's why I do this the way I do it, is because I want everybody to be together and we can talk to each other. And you can't. It's so hard to do that online. And sometimes, I type a note on a feedback, and then somebody goes, "Wow, I really screwed up." It's like, I didn't mean you screwed up. I'm just trying to point out what you did. You can't. It's hard to critique. You have to. Language is really hard, and you honestly, anyway, you're going to have to get really used if you make a career in the field like I have. You're going to have to get used to really blunt, painful feedback. They will tear apart your scripts and it will make you feel like they're hurting your child. And you have to just look right over that, and try to see the benefit of the notes, look through the notes and realize what they're saying and what it means and what is not being communicated in the story that is making them think or feel that way. And that's all you can do. And you just can't take it any other way. Some people are really brutal the way they give notes. I can tell you from experience. I've been working with a guy, not on the project I'm on right now, but on the last project I was on. He was just brutal, and he was even insulting at times. They didn't replace me as a writer or anything because they knew I was doing the job. But they just are so they can be really snarky. It's an attractive bunch who work in Hollywood, and the writers can often feel like that ugly child who's always just being spoken down to, when we're the ones who are trying to help them achieve their goals.
Right.
But then there are other people you work with, and they are a frickin' dream, and they are a genius, and they look at your ideas and they say one sentence, and all of a sudden you realize everything your script wasn't and could be. There are development executives that good, and I've worked with them too. So it's just going to be you got to be prepared for the worst and pray for the best. So anyway, my feedback is sometimes tough, but I don't mean it to be tough. I mean it to be as clear and accurate, and I don't want there to be any ifs, ands, or buts or miscommunications about what's wrong. So I get into it, and I get in, and but don't ever take anything the wrong way that I don't love every student. I do. You guys are the reason I'm doing this. I don't have to do this. I do this because I want to do this because I want to share, and I love doing this. It's the only thing I want to do when I'm not writing, and when I don't get to spend time playing with my kids or my friends. So anyway, okay. So any other questions?
I came halfway through Nathan when he was speaking to you already about premise. I'm still struggling with premise because like I feel like I have a good premise, but then based on your notes, I feel like, oh, well, maybe this is too vague, or maybe this is too. So I've been, while everything else just came naturally, I just felt like premise is what I'm struggling on.
Premise is, and I say it in the directions, and I say it in the program a lot. Premise is the hardest thing I will teach you, and you learn that the first week in one of my classes
Right.
because everything builds off of that. It's really really hard, and it screws everything up if you don't nail it. So don't feel bad. A lot of people struggle with this.
The
Premise.
frustrating thing,
Go ahead.
the frustrating thing is I feel like I know what I want to say and I know what the point I'm trying to make, but I don't know how to write it out
I mean,
specifically.
that happens a lot. Sometimes what happens is somebody gives me a premise that's incorrectly worded or whatever, and I can figure out what they mean and kind of get it back to them. And the truth is, wordsmithing, figuring out the exact words for what you mean, that's not easy to come by either. And that's why it's so hard because you're really distilling the heart of your meaning in life into a succinct statement about something you're going to try to prove. And you got to do it. You got one sentence, and it's got to be clear throughout the universe what that means, what that could mean, what the antithesis might be, where counter arguments would be. It is not easy. It is the hardest thing. It took me a long time to really get a grip on it. So don't. It's hard. Do you want to talk about the one you have right now? What's the premise you've been working with today?
Um, well, I totally changed it.
Good,
Uh,
and I can work with
I
you on that. That's why we're here.
All right, great. Um, it sounds kind of strange, but it's performing music for God leads to salvation. And it totally can be argued because why would performing music for God lead to salvation, you know? But that's what I ended up coming up with after changing the word 1,000 times. Originally, it was music leads to freedom. Then it was
Well, I love your musical stuff. I love the idea of a movie. I love musicals. Go ahead.
oh,
Sorry.
awesome. But yeah, so I changed it. Gosh, I wish I had my list in front of me. How I literally changed it like 28 times. And the reason what I stuck with this one is because it's everything is very tangible. It can be argued. It does have I don't know. It's kind of where I want to go with the story.
What does he have
It's
to
it's
learn? What does he have to learn during the script?
if I can tell you my inner and outer journey, it makes a little sense. My outer journey is, he plays literally for the mafia, which is playing in a way. He's like very controlled and heavily playing for prostitute, drug infested nightclub kind of thing. And his
Is this
goal,
set
his
in
whole
the
thing is he.
1930s?
I'm sorry, what?
Is this set in the 1920s and 30s or 40s?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. All three. And so he wants to but he wants the reason I came up with music leads to freedom is because he wants the freedom of being in control of his own music, and then eventually he really wants to find he's looking for love through the whole thing, like not romantic love but just to be loved. And then my inner journey is the protagonist's inner journey. This is a good question too. I put goes from promiscuous to monogamous, and then or it could be from cheater to faithful. They both mean the same thing. I don't know what would be better to word it, but that's my inner journey.
Well, that's also okay. If the inner that because that journey has to relate to the premise.
Right.
Um, so it is the movie about somebody learning to be faithful, or is it
It's about
something, or is it about that music has a higher purpose?
it's
What
more about
think about that as a
his
premise
personal
for what you're
relationships.
saying. Music has a higher purpose
Right.
because it sounds like that's what
Okay.
you're saying in the service of God.
Right.
Um,
And the reason I veered away something like that because I didn't know if you would say that was more vague. Music has a higher purpose.
it is vague. You're right. Um, look, this is look. I'm spitballing. This is spitballing. Um, okay, so the the outer journey. Let's just talk about it all. The outer journey was what?
Okay. I put the protagonist's outer journey is to perform music for the Pope and God. And that is kind of what he wants to do and ends up doing is playing for the Pope.
Okay, you can take out "and God" because that's reflective, and you don't want "and" in your
Right.
mission statements for the protagonist.
Okay.
Make it clear. It's one thing. We need to know that when he performs music for the Pope, the movie is over. That he has succeeded in his mission.
Okay.
You know.
Well, that's kind of like I said, and God, because I actually want it to end with his death, and he actually gets to play for God, and when he dies, that's
Oh,
the
that's
whole.
great.
That's
It's
kind
beautiful.
of where
It's beautiful.
Beautiful visual.
Beautiful.
we're going.
Beautiful. All right. So that's what he wants. What music? I'm thinking about the premise and how what changes there. Here's what the changes in the story and what you're saying is that who you play for is almost as important as what you play,
Mm.
if not more so, because it's about who he's playing it for.
I'm sorry I lost you, but the screen totally cut out right then.
Who you play for is important as how you play is important as the music you play. Who you play it
Okay.
for, or is more important.
Right.
Um, it seems like the story needs to be more about. I can relate to this a lot because the idea of premise is honestly about teaching people to say something that matters with your work, so it's not just hogwash at the movies.
Right.
You know what I mean? And we get a lot of
Right.
hogwash. It's a
Yeah.
recycled version of all the crap we've seen before, and some of that crap is entertaining. That doesn't make it any more than nice crap.
Right.
So, but what you're saying the same thing, but you're saying it as far as how music is done, as opposed to how a script is written. And now, is it the subject matter of the songs that change, or is it just who he's singing them for?
All right, well, it's who he's singing for. He starts out singing and playing in all the brothels and then the mafia-controlled nightclubs, and then eventually he's able to break away and get away from that. He is a very promiscuous person that sleeps around on all his wives, and then eventually he meets his wife. The reason I know all this is because I'm doing a biopical on Louis Armstrong. Is what I decided to do. So I started researching this weekend and researching his life, and I have a gazillion notes on his life. So
Were you the one who said you were going to do that earlier? Because I love that. I
yes,
love Louis
yes,
Armstrong. God, that's great.
me too. And so it was between him and a couple other guys, and I decided to hone in on him because of such the Sinner to Saint story, where he was owned by the mafia, played for the mafia, grew up dirt
Yeah.
poor, and then mother was a prostitute, and then grew up in the mafia, and then wanting to break free from that over and over and over, finally breaks out, meets his fourth wife, and she changes his life around. He ends up playing for the Pope, and something magical happens where he went from this promiscuous, cheating on all his wives, kind of heavily involved in the whole nightclub scene with the mob, to suddenly faithful, turned his whole life around, and gave back to his community. Ended up moving into a poor community just to give back, and then dies, kind of deal.
What do you
But
think of music saves souls?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Music can save souls.
That was one of my ones that I gave you before. Remember that?
Yeah, I'm trying to.
Music saves
Is that
souls.
is because that's what it sounds. I'm going back and forth because there were a lot.
Can I ask a couple of clarifying, challenging
Sure.
questions? Okay, so um, I don't know, this is just something that struck me while we were talking about it. Don't the people in the nightclubs need music too? If your premise is music saves souls, I'm just sort of
Oh, dude, totally, completely, 100% agree with you.
okay.
They do,
So
but,
I,
but his
the,
his personal desire is to get out of that.
right, which is fine. I'm just saying that the comment that music's that it's about who you play for. I'm like, well, don't the people whose lives are maybe not where they need to be, don't they need the music even more potentially?
Yeah, totally.
It's not. He's not saying they don't need music. It's about what
Right.
we have. The hardest thing is differentiating. That's a different story. He's talking
Right.
about,
Right.
and it doesn't mean either of you are wrong. They're just different ways of looking at a story.
Yeah.
Um,
No. I just mean focusing on the audience might make it confusing.
okay, okay, I can go with that. Um, but if it's about who you're singing for, I don't know. I don't know.
Um,
Where are you? Where are you now? Again, let's go back and circle back to where you are now. What is your premise you had now? Singing for God? What?
my original, okay, the one that I gave you originally was performing music for God leads to salvation. Another one I had right before this was performing music for God. What I feel is going on, because his outer journey. Oh, I already told you. His outer journey is to perform music for the Pope. His inner journey, he goes from this promiscuous cheater, crazy guy to almost a holy lifestyle. So it's like that's what I originally wanted, was performing music for God leads to holiness, and or even
He goes whatever the
perform music
opposite
for
is.
the Pope leads.
He goes towards righteousness.
Okay, that's another one. Righteousness. Yeah, I did have that one too.
Yeah, righteousness or faithfulness. You had faithful. I know that.
Right.
Um,
Hmm.
yeah. Okay, and then playing for God leads to salvation.
Okay,
I'm
that's
going to debate and ask and talk questions, but I think you're okay. I think you're good.
okay. Cool. All right.
You know, like I said, this is the hardest thing. And if you feel that that's the journey and that in that premise, it's clear that playing for God, it makes sense if the arc is going towards righteousness.
Right.
So, because this is a salvation story, a redemption, salvation kind of story. Um, so, using words like that will help tie the premise to the inner journey, which is what you want.
Okay.
Does that help?
Definitely. 100%.
I like that. I like it when I help. I'm just all right. Do you have any other questions?
I just have a quick question.
Sure.
Sorry, Matt.
No, good. I don't have any more questions, so go ahead, Jess.
Okay, cool. I had a question about, I just heard a little bit of the conversation that you were having with Nathaniel.
Uh-huh.
And I believe it might have addressed it, so I'm sorry if you're repeating yourself, but
Okay, we start early.
okay, cool. So when we're, developing our premise, I know you said try not to get caught up in the story. And I tried to do that. It was really difficult for me just because that's not the way I've been used to doing it.
I know.
But I did it nonetheless. And then when I was doing the character, breakdown and all that, I really found myself being pulled back into the story again and like really focusing on the story behind the premise. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that at what point is it okay to start focusing on the story and kind of moving away from the focus on?
Here's what I like to do. Here's what I would say. One is that whatever story you have in mind, I would throw it away. Not throw it away, throw it away. Not like you can never write it, but build strictly based on what you have and build specific to it. Here's the process. You're going to build a premise and you decide what genre that's going to be in. You start picturing that genre and what that means, and you're going to get ideas for kind of characters and situations and stuff like that. And then you're going to design a character whose inner journey is going to prove your premise. So the premise is not a separate story. You're not having two things meet in the middle. Because there are two ways to do this. One is going from premise up, and the other is going from story idea back to premise. Okay? And until you've built from premise up, you don't know the process well enough to go backwards from story. Because you have to know how it works building from nothing, how everything fits together. I'm showing you the road. This is the directions. I'm giving you the assembly directions for how to do this. But unless you know how it comes apart and how it comes together first by putting it together, you don't know how to take it apart yet.
Yeah.
So I ask that students in this class put all preconceived stories aside and build from a kernel up. And then at the end, once you understand everything, you'll be able to take an idea from here and deconstruct it all the way back down.
Okay, so what happened with me though, like last night when I went to start writing my character, I couldn't help but to think of the story.
Well,
so it's like it wasn't a preconceived story.
Premise, or did the premise come out of the story?
No, the story came out of the premise.
Well, then that's great. That's great. That's the order, and you can start thinking about it then. I thought you were saying the premise was something you kind of wanted from. You can start thinking. Look, you can think about story. Obviously, we're thinking about story. We're always thinking about story, generally speaking. But you want to start with. Okay, first, what's your premise? Let's just do this.
So the premise, the wording might be changed a little bit because I was still kind of talking back and forth with you about it.
Sure.
But it's somewhere along the lines that
when you're done writing the script, you'll still change the premise again.
Probably.
Yeah, everything keeps growing. Everything gets more crystallized the more you do it. But you just have to have a solid enough premise to be able to build a solid structure on. It may evolve later more.
I got it.
Okay.
Cool.
So go ahead. What was your premise now?
Insanity is a good thing.
Insanity is a good thing.
I can't wait to read the script. I can't wait.
You picked a tough argument. Because, because it can be a good thing, because anything can be something. You have to make a definitive statement. So she's done the right thing by trying to make a very solid, clear statement. Okay. So, and then what's the inner journey?
The inner journey of the character is to go from a place of I want to say it the way I wrote it more eloquently.
The character goes from
he goes from not believing to believing. So he goes from someone who has no faith to having faith.
Okay. From skeptic,
Yeah, you can say skeptic.
from skeptic to believer.
Yeah, he goes, here's what I wrote. He goes from cynical to believing. That's a more simpler way to put it.
Yes. And then again, repeat the premise.
The premise, actually, how I wrote it on the assignment is insanity. Insanity is a gift. In other words, insanity is a good thing. Whether I say it's a good thing or a gift, I haven't 100% decided yet. But
No, you know what? I like gift because if you look, even you could even if you word it this way, it makes sense because life is hard and God gives you the struggles you need. If you believe that, you can say
yeah,
even insanity is a gift.
okay. I like.
Um, you don't have to use that. I spitball. That's what I do. I'm a writer.
No, no, I'm just saying I like it though.
Okay, well then use it. It's yours. Take it. Even insanity is a gift. If that's the case, I'm not sure what that has to do with believing. I don't see them tying together. I'm not sure how they tie together. Um, it doesn't have to do with losing your mind. It doesn't have to do with um, uh, um, how things you incur things that are meant to be or make you stronger or allow you to cope. Um, um, that's why this is sometimes so hard. The premise, it's a good statement, but
Yeah.
we have to find a way of creating an inner journey that proves insanity can be a good thing. So how would it change somebody? Now, are they insane at the beginning, or do they become insane and they're happier once they're insane?
See, this to me is where it gets a little confusing because it's like it's you don't know the story, so it's hard to kind of say.
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, so that's why like when I say he goes from cynical to believing, he goes from cynical as to believing like insanity is he's not the insane character in the story. He goes from believing that insanity or mental illness is somewhat of it's like something that needs to be fixed. It's a problem. It's a medical condition. And then he goes to believing something different by the end of the film.
Then he
Now,
goes
how he
from
gets
then what the story is he's going from I'm trying to think of the right word, maybe biased
okay,
to
I see
accepting
that. Yeah,
because you need to accept the insane.
I
Um,
see.
it
Yeah,
has
that's actually that works too. Yeah.
he can what's the word when you it's not bigoted because that's more a racial thing. Um, prejudice.
Yeah.
Prejudice is a good one.
Yeah. I like
He
that
goes
too.
from prejudiced to accepting. I think that's what you're looking for, and I think that has more to do with what do you think?
Yeah, I like that. Where I took believing from and it kind of came from the story because it's going to be supernatural based.
Mm,
So that's kind of where I'm basically taking it is that people that are insane are actually gifted. It's just like a form of higher intelligence, like almost like a just in a different. They're just connected to something different, and that's kind of something I've seen explored before, but something I've always wished that more people would make films about because I
God
think it's
bless you
just
for
an
doing it.
interesting theory.
That's
Yeah.
wonderful that you're doing it. This is why we become writers, is to make the stories we wish others would have the courage to tell. That's exactly what you should be writing.
Jessica, quick question:
Yeah.
Is is the supernatural real in the story?
Or is it imagined?
No, that
Right.
well, that see now that's one of the questions because like for instance example like schizophrenics are often like thought to be crazy because they're seeing things that aren't there. Well, what if the
Right.
schizophrenics aren't crazy? What if they actually seeing are something that is there? And that's kind
Just
of what the
maybe
movie
portal to
toys with
another
for a
dimension.
while.
So
I'm
for the purpose of the story, she's seeing something that is there. It's just everyone else is thinking that she's crazy.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, just checking. Because I was like, is it a metaphor or is it literal?
It's like the kid.
Yeah.
He's dead people. It's not that the dead
Exactly.
people are
Right.
ghosts that aren't there.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I like it.
Of course this is happening in your head, Harry, but why does that mean it's not real?
That is a Harry Potter quote.
Yes, it is.
Yes, Dumbledore. Of course it's happening in your head. How would you think that
And that's what I was talking about. Like the story just kind of, as I was writing this outline, just kind of started coming to me as I was writing the outline. And I just, so I just want to make sure I was going in the right direction. Thank you.
No, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. Anybody else have any questions?
Do you find
Yes.
what I posted in the chat there is that helpful? Because
sorry, I must have missed it because
Okay.
there's been enough since then. The notes are on the work, not you as a person. Yes. Was that what you were saying? The note.
Well, but there's another one. There's more result.
Okay. Their thesis statement. Sorry, for some reason I just developed a lisp. What are thesis statements?
The premises.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. It's a hypothesis, technically speaking.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're making a hypothesis about the world, and then you are going to show in your paper, which is your script, the arguments pro and against, and prove that the pro is the whatever it is you're saying is the way it really does seem to work out. That's exactly.
I figured most of us have probably written academic essays before, so that might help.
It might. We'll take it. Yeah,
I might make it worse. I don't know.
Yeah. I do an elongated version of that premise article in the book, and it talks about how it's a hypothesis. So yeah. Anyway, yes, absolutely. Did you have any? Does anybody have any other questions? People who've asked questions can ask more questions. I want to make sure everybody has all their questions answered.
No. I think I have some revising to do, but that's not a question.
What was that?
I said I think I have some revising to do, but that's not a question.
No. We all have revising to do. I have the script that I'm writing now for a job. I am already on my umpteenth draft, and I still haven't made it my final draft to turn in yet. I last night I went through the first 30 pages and rewrote them again. I'm realizing I got some friends to give me notes because I use peer groups just like I have you use peer groups. The reason why I try to make it so that everybody gets 3 sets of feedback is because you realize if 2 people have feedback on the same issue, you know it's an issue whether or not they're correct on what the issue is, because people are seeing something and they're bumping on it. So I get feedback from 3 people whenever I do any draft of anything, friends or sometimes even former students, and they kick my butt. And so, no, last night I went through the whole first act again because I realized a character-specific story. I'm doing one of the more complicated things you can possibly do in screenwriting because that's what the producer wants, which is 5 to 6 protagonists in one script, which means everybody's got a character arc. This happens in movies like St. Elmo's Fire. They're very, very complicated to write if you understand the technicalities of it. So you're doubling up people are love interests and protagonists in some stories, and in other stories, they can all be protagonists. But to this story, that they also have to serve the love interest, and in that story, they have to serve as a reflection character. So you have to figure out everybody's double duties and what they're doing, because if you have 6 protagonists, you try to make the other roles also within the group so that your cast isn't so big that people can't keep track of what the hell's going on in the story because there are just too many characters.
Oh God, you're writing Lost.
Yeah. Sorry if I'm confusing you. I don't mean to, because you can write a story with more than one protagonist. It's just incredibly complicated. We just focus on one protagonist off of one premise, and that's what most people write and what most people make as movies. And that's what you should focus on. Make sure there's one great role for one great movie star at least, and then a bunch of other really well-written roles that actors will want to play. I have a quick question for our writing for film and animation assignment. Last week, the love interest, mentor, and reflection character were optional. Are they still optional this week? If you're not going to use them in your short screenplay of 10 pages or less, you do not include them. I like, personally, when I do that, I'll tell you what I would do. I understand people don't, when I don't make somebody do something, a lot of people don't include it because they're like, oh, well, why would I include something I could get points off for doing if I don't do it right? The reason is because you're here to learn and you want to make sure you would know how to do it so that when you write the feature film version of this story idea, I totally did think that. I know. See, yeah. I know how students think, and I'm a tough grader, so I get the logic. I totally am right with you. I really do. But I would rather learn here and get a bad grade and realize what I'm doing wrong than get out there and not know how to do it. And in a short script, the truth is to pass that class, you're writing a short script because I only get 1 month with you to create, develop, and write a whole short screenplay. We don't have enough time to write a whole feature. But if the idea and the characters and the stuff is good enough and you like it, you should be able to expand that idea, a well-structured story, into a full 3-act feature script. And if you want to do that, you will probably need those other characters, and it would be a good idea to have planned them out so that you know that you've thought it through on how they would be used. At the same time, I'm not going to make you do it. I'm not an evil dictator, but I'm just saying I understand how most people will think of it, and I would explain to you how I would have to think of it, knowing that it's not an easy process, and it does take a few times of doing something to figure out how to do it right. And it's better to do it supervised and bang your head against the wall later when you're not in a class and you don't have fellow student feedback and not knowing what you did wrong. You want to have worked on it and done it time and again. So that's my recommendation. That doesn't mean it's what you have to do. What you have to do and what I would do are two different things. If that's fair. I think it's fair. You're very welcome. Just so you know, I was answering to a chat window, everybody. That's why it sounded like I was talking to myself. You see how I talked about that earlier, and then now I did it? It's called setup and payoff. You do that in your stories too. Another lesson. No. All right. Does anybody else have any questions before I talk about the homework? By the way, I'm sorry this table is really wobbly, but it's the only table in the room that has the most soundproof walls. All the other offices and rooms have open top. So it's like industrial, with pipes and all that stuff that you can see. And this is the one room with a roof on it. But the table's what the table is, and it's wobbly as hell. But if I'm going to pick, I'm going to pick the room where you're not going to get all the background noise and I'm not going to get distracted by all that background noise. All right, so since there are no questions at this time, I am going to move forward with discussing the homework. This is week 2 of the classes. So in CCR, character creation and development, it's CCR or CCD? The teacher who taught it before me says CCR. The one who one of the people above me say CCD. So whatever it is, we are doing the character dossier this week, which means you have to have sorted out the premise. The premise is going to lead you to an inner journey and an outer journey for the protagonist, and then the outer journey is going to spawn an antagonist who has a goal that has nothing to do with the protagonist, and the protagonist has an outer journey that has nothing to do with the antagonist. They both have something they want to accomplish, and it's not personal between them. This is what makes a story feel real. It's not just somebody designed, oh, he's going to fight this person, and I'm doing this to hurt this person. No. What is it they actually want, each of them, and then what they both want, whatever it is that they want, they both can't get it, and the other one succeed. That's great conflict, because two people trying to win a race, they're not trying to beat this guy, they're trying to win the race. And then they happen to have to also beat that guy. You see what I mean? So make sure you have proactive protagonists and antagonists who want to do their own specific thing to achieve their own specific physical goal. It's a physical, purely physical goal, something they want to see done. And it has nothing to do with the other guy, but the other guy or girl just happens to get in the way of the execution of that. All right. And then the inner journey is going to relate to the inner journey is what's happening that the protagonist didn't plan. That's a journey he didn't plan to go on, or he or she didn't plan to go on, but that's what's going to happen through going on that outer journey and trying to accomplish that thing that is going to prove what it is your premise needs, what your premise says. Those four things are the biggest things in this, as well as one other thing, and that is each of those two characters, you have to write a character introduction fit for a feature film screenplay, which means for a protagonist, you should illustrate the character flaw, and it should be a sizzling opening, an eye-catching, memorable introduction to that character. All character introductions of all five major character types that you're going to learn the other three next week, they all should have really memorable openings so that people don't forget who they are, or what they mean, or how they were introduced. Every character needs a great sizzling entrance. First of all, it'll attract a good actor to the part, so they want how you enter. Everybody wants a great entrance, just as much as they want a great exit. But we're working on entrances, so you have it should be those two things. It needs to be really sizzling, and it needs to do the character flaw. Also, at the same time, the antagonist it should show the character skill. You know, what are these guys good at? Why are they going to be a formidable adversary? And they're also doing something that is very dynamic. Something very memorable. All I have to do is, with one finger, touch the desk and it must be hard to watch. I'm sorry. Okay, so everything else is just about trying to really understand the psychology, because once you know what the premise is and what their inner journey is and how they're going to change, you need to figure out why they're that way, and that's what the rest of it's about. The rest of it is just about figuring out, okay, why does this person need to change this way? Why are they that way that needs changing? Why are they a skeptical, cynical, non-believer? What is it in their youth that made them feel that way? You have to figure those things out, and you have to ask, what are the real life experiences, opinions, and situations that make them feel and say the way that they act when we come into our story. It's important because if you can really understand that stuff, you'll really figure out who your character is before you start writing them in a script. As for an antagonist, whether they're a bad guy or just somebody with a different perspective, they don't have to be bad. Antagonist, people say villain, but the truth is, or nemesis. But the truth is that person, the best conflict is when the antagonist also has good reason for doing what they're doing, and it makes sense. And it's not because they're just a bad person, but it makes sense for who they are, where they are, and what they want to do. And what they want to do makes sense because of how their life has been. So make sure you have all of that. That's what you figure out while you're writing that backstory of that character and figuring out how they are and what makes them the way that they are. And that's that. So make sure you really nail the four most important things. And there are a lot of things you need to remember about how to write a character introduction. Don't use passive verbs. You don't use passive verbs in script action lines, because everything happens at that moment in the present. And what sounds better? What sounds more engaging? John stands in the doorway, or John is standing in the doorway? John stands. It's an active role. Is standing, he's standing in the doorway. It just sounds a little less, strong. You want to make action strong and immediate and punchy. And you do that by keeping things in active present tense. So I don't use words like is, the word are, or verbs ending in ing, or anything with any past tense. You never use past tense in an action line of a script, which is what character descriptions and introductions are. They're in the action line of a script. There are three things in a script. There's a scene heading, which is also called a slug line, which tells you where the scene is located, whether it's indoors or outdoors, and whether it's day or night. Don't have to worry about that yet. But there are three things. There's the action, which is what we see and hear, and that's it. It only can be what we physically see. You cannot. Another thing, don't put anything that cannot be seen in an action line. Somebody has this room at 1:30, so I got to go. Last thing, okay. And so those are some things to work on for that. Read the instructions. It's all in there. For writing for film and animation, this week is week 2, and you're giving me 3-act structure. So you will rewrite and revise, edit what you did for the first week, week 1's homework assignments, and you will turn in that with and make sure that plays forward into your 3-act structure this week. You'll be giving me, you'll be doing all of what was there last week, revised with my notes. And then this week, you're going to include stage 1 and stage 6 on either end. And then between stage 1 and stage 6, which is what tracks the inner journey. That's very important. You have to show in stage 1 where the inner journey starts, and in stage 6 where the inner journey ends. And then turning points 1 through 5, and keep all those written out. It's explained very well in the assignment, and don't forget to read the attachment about what goes into each one of the turning points and what they include. Does anybody have any questions on any of that before I end the session?
That's good.
Going once.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey guys, it's my pleasure. I love doing this. It's great to hear from you. It's great to have your questions. I wish I wasn't writing so feverishly so that I could just do this all the time. But believe me, you want a working writer teaching you. You want somebody who's doing Definitely. It in the field right now, being the one advising you. So unfortunately, that also requires some time. All right, you guys have my email. The first assignment in the whole class has my cell phone number. Don't call me too late on my cell phone, please. I work from 10 to 5, so on the school stuff. And I'm always available by email. I always respond to every email within 24 hours, unless it's on the weekend. All right. Good night. Thank you. Have a wonderful week. What? Was it somebody else say something?
I just said thank you, break a leg with your script. Yeah.
My pleasure always.